It is Sunday the 15th of July 2018. I'm just in the middle of my protest outside the Unitarian Church of Montreal. Got somebody going in there. I started up the camera because I thought there was a possibility of interaction, but I guess not this morning, at least so far. And another attendee, most likely member, showing up. That's two people showing up just before the service starts. I've seen a handful of others go in the front entry of the church so far, not including those two. So, 7 or so people, half a dozen or so I've seen go in the front, and I'm sure a few went in the back. But it seems to be a pretty quiet, uneventful Sunday at the Unitarian Church of Montreal in terms of church attendance. There's only 2 bicycles in the bike rack, which can actually get filled. So yeah, it looks like not a whole lot of people showing up to the Unitarian Church of Montreal this morning. Well, we'll see what we do here. I put down a few chalk slogans, and of course the protest is basically as much, if not more, for the general public as it is for the church members who've been ignoring it for over 20 years now. Obviously, one wants church members to respond appropriately to the protest, but they haven't in over 2 decades now. But it always is worthwhile, at least in terms of informing the public about problems with the Unitarian Church of Montreal locally and the larger Unitarian Universalist religious community. Okay, that looks like a police car, possibly? No, I guess not. Okay, I wasn't really expecting police to show up this morning, since there's really no reason whatsoever for them to do so. Okay, we got somebody coming out here. Smoking, apparently. And we got a woman showing up. So yeah, so far quite an uneventful protest this morning, unlike last Sunday when one of the church ladies got uppity with me and was trying to confiscate my picket signs and otherwise getting in my face, throwing my picket signs into the bike lane and so on, and then of course accusing me of harassing her, when if anyone was harassing anyone, it was her harassing me. And yes, the police did show up as a result of her calling the police and claiming I was harassing her. So we had a little philosophical discussion with a couple of SPVM officers. And while they were basically, shall I say, relatively polite, they nonetheless goofed up a little bit in making statements that, as far as I'm concerned, show a lack of respect for charter rights and freedoms and the right to engage in peaceful public protest. The male police officer, who I spoke with mostly, said that he thought that my picket sign slogans, or at least one of them, constituted what he called libel diffamatoire in French, so defamatory libel, basically saying that my picket sign was libelous, when it absolutely is not. The picket sign in question is the one on my left hand, which says Unitarian Universalist perversion of justice sucks U asterisk U. So this is the picket sign in question in particular that he at minimum was saying constituted defamatory libel. And we had a little discussion about that. As far as I'm concerned, it's not defamatory or libelous. It's 100% truthful. Unitarian Universalists do in fact engage in various forms of perversion of justice, including calling in bullshit complaints to the SPVM to try and suppress my protest. That's just one of the forms of perversion of justice that Montreal Unitarians engage in, by no means the only one. And then of course we're not talking about just Montreal Unitarians, we're talking about Unitarian Universalists more generally. I would say falsely accusing me of violating Canada's blasphemy law and legal bullying intended to hide pedophilia and rape. That's perversion of justice, to hide perverts in the church. And interestingly enough, and ironically enough, this Unitarian Universalist perversion of justice sucks U asterisk U picket sign, or very similar ones, pre-existed the false blasphemous libel accusation that the Unitarian Universalist Association's Canadian attorney made on June 1st, 2012, because there were previous perversions of justice. It's like perversion of justice after perversion of justice after perversion of justice, as far as I'm concerned. But you know, mainly, you know, making false reports to the police, bringing false criminal charges against me, and we can talk about the false charge I was arrested on in December 2000, allegedly violating the section 176.3 of the Canadian Criminal Code, which prohibits disrupting the...
All religion screws people up, brother.
You're right. But hey, I got to start somewhere, right? and this one in particular, I got reason to, so... But you're absolutely right. So, this fellow says all religions screw people up, brother, or words to that effect. And he's right, you know, I mean, religion does have positive value as well. I think, like, I'm not against religion, and I think it can actually have a positive role in society, but unfortunately, there's probably not a religion on the planet that, you know, as this guy says, doesn't screw up people in one way or another. Perhaps not in terms of the religion itself, but in terms of how some of its clergy and leaders behave and so on. So it's funny he used the word screws, since we are in part talking about screwing up in the sense of literally screwing people in clergy sexual misconduct. But so it was an interesting choice of words that he used. But yeah, we're talking about all forms of screwing up and screwing over people, not just sexual ones. And I think he meant it in the broader sense. But it is interesting that you know, recent protests have been centered around, amongst other things, Unitarians covering up and denying sexual abuse of children. So anyway, getting back to the perversion of justice picket sign and what happened with the police. You know, so we debated that a little bit, the male cop and I basically said, well, feel free to have me charged and we'll go to court and we'll see what happens, kind of thing, because I'm very, very confident that I could successfully defend myself against any bullshit defamatory libel charge. I've already successfully basically dissuaded the UUA from proceeding with this ridiculous blasphemous libel accusation against me, which is in fact a criminal charge. Carries a 2-year jail term if you're convicted. Well, that's the maximum sentence. So, you know, they threatened to have me charged with violating Canada's blasphemy law if I did not take down blog posts that told the readily verifiable truth about such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape committed by certain Unitarian Universalist ministers, to say nothing of certain Unitarian Universalist Sunday school teachers and ordinary lay leaders. Basically they might have tried to bring charges against me, but if they did, the police basically told them to buzz off. But I don't think they even went that far. I think I successfully demolished any illusions that they might have had about bringing blasphemous libel charges against me in my responses to the cease and desist demand letters I was served with. But getting back to the SPVM and their lack of respect for my right to engage in peaceful public protest and their attempts to dissuade me from protesting, the female officer, who mainly dealt with the female complainant, did approach me, and she said that my protest was harassment. So according to her, my peaceful public protest against Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse, which includes such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape committed by certain Unitarian Universalist ministers, but is by no means limited to that. That this protest, and the protest also against the cover-up and denial of clergy abuse, including sex abuse of children, was harassment, and apparently of a criminal nature. She said that the church well, she didn't specifically say church, but she basically insinuated that there were more harassment charges coming my way above and beyond the ridiculous criminal harassment charge that Montreal Unitarian clergy abuse enabler Sue Montgomery brought against me last December. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm really not concerned, because my protest is about as peaceful public protest gets, and I don't think there's any way to really pretend that it constitutes harassment of Montreal Unitarians, and there's plenty of evidence of Montreal Unitarians harassing me in their efforts to try and suppress this protest, including some physical assaults on me. In fact, the woman who called in the complaint last Sunday actually spat into my lens before calling in the complaint. No, she was basically harassing me, getting into my space and so on. And she actually spat into my lens from a very close distance. So,
yeah, man. Get that shit out.
I'm doing it.
About time, man.
Thank you.
More power to you, right?
Thank you. So, nice positive response from a member of the public. Glad we got that recorded. So yeah, bring that shit out. More power to you. That's a positive response from a member of the public. And yes, he saw the chalk slogans that spoke about how Unitarians, okay, he's reading one right now, he's having a good look at the slogan. We'll walk down that way and see what it says. Well, maybe we won't, because it says exactly the same that the one here says, and I don't want to get in the way of the people coming this way. So we'll look at this one. And what he saw said exactly the same thing as this one said, and says, Unitarians cover up and deny sexual abuse of children. And he saw my unsafe sect picket sign. And he saw my picket sign that says Unitarian Universalist perversion of justice, sucks you, asterisk you, which brings us back to the whole perversion of justice theme here. We'll let these people go by. I see a couple of people going into the church. A couple of young ladies, probably university students, maybe college students. Anyhow, I know the Unitarian Universalists do try to recruit university students. You know, they try to be the upper crust, as it were. So they like to think of themselves as the intellectual religious community, which is open to considerable debate these days. Their intellectual capacities, based on what I've seen, aren't really that good. I'm not saying that there aren't some intelligent, well-educated Unitarian Universalists. I'm sure there are, but when it comes to issues like clergy abuse and the cover-up and denial of clergy abuse, they can be remarkably willfully ignorant and, quite frankly, just plain stupid. So not the brightest people when it comes to dealing with clergy misconduct issues. Anyhow, let's see. So yeah, I don't know. I really don't know what the turnout is, but it's not much this morning. It's pretty low-end turnout this morning. So I think we're going to wrap this up fairly soon. I got another respectful nod from the guy. He didn't say anything, but it was quite clear that he was showing a little respect there. And a few more people coming this way. I'm just going to check and see if my camera is still recording. Oh yeah, still going there. But yeah, I think we're going to just wrap this up sooner rather than later. And we usually go till about 11, but
Good morning.
good morning. So far, most of the response, if not all of the response from the public this morning has been 100% positive.